Observing cycles, sharing insights, and solving problems together by combining historical, climate, food, and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne.
Right along with Ransom Godwin tonight. Thank you everybody for joining us. Have you felt the world spun in a different direction even since last week? It's like we have this conversation every week. It's incredible. Like the amount of change that's going on in a single week would have been a full year of change in an old world, not the new world, or even more. I'm dealing with my own issues here. I've lost so much of my preps, chicken, fruits, fish in the pond are diminished because of massive floods. I just got a lot of things going on. I need to rethink a lot of things because, as we move forward, I'll tell you a couple ideas here tonight as the program continues here on Revolution Radio, Studio A, 10 p.m. to midnight. Remember, we're streaming out on Rumble. Vigilante TV shout out, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and those different venues. You can find us there, Mini SH Conversations on YouTube. I was given some information, and this kind of occurred at the same time Alex Jones was saying, hey, we're going to come into a second lockdown. But it's the same person who's given me information 3 times before that has been correct, So when I talk to this person, I listen because so far it's been 3 good calls. So I got a 3 for 3. Although, I got to admit, some people have been feeding me bad information on purpose to get me to run with something. And I'm very, very, very leery who I talk to and what kind of information I accept as true anymore after getting burnt last year. So I'll talk about, what is planned here coming up for September, October, November that rides right on top of, it does seem like there's something else pulling in here for this 2.0 of the last 3 years we've seen. Going to keep it very coded and very, I'm going to pull back the reins a little bit, but the information I was given, it goes a little something like this. The stores are going to close completely this time because the guys will be, quote unquote, they can't guarantee the safety of the food. Okay, so what that means is, and I encourage everybody out there to look at this. If you go to your big box store like the Walmarts or the Targets or the Safeways or anywhere that you see big box stores, big delivery points, large parking lots for shopping malls, etc. Look for the installation of pickup lanes for cars. Now, that's all one point. You could say, oh, great, they're going to make us do this and that. But when I say all stores are going to close, I mean, they're going to close all the supermarkets. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to order online using a credit card only, and you'll be delivered in your box or whatever, and it's going to be rationed, and you're going to get what you get. But that's not really, okay, that in itself was like, okay. But the thing that stuck out to me the most was they're going to go under the guise of they cannot have safe food delivery because this whatever is going to evolve. I was told it was lungs and something with the lungs breathing into some kind of blood coming out of a cough from the lungs. That's the nail on the head there. But they're going to require, this is the thing that I got out of it, they're going to require every single fresh piece of produce coming out delivered to your car to have that appeal coating on it because that can guarantee the food's safety. Yeah. Now, there's a few other bits of information that were also related to me, but I'm not going to talk about those tonight because I can't verify that. I'm still in a super information dig mode because I really want to see if those bits of information are true or not. So anyway, Ransom, I appreciate you joining me. That's my show intro, man. I'm just sad my chickens have been getting picked off one by one, 6 by 6. with the raccoons or hawks or whatever, man. I'm just distraught right now for my chickens, and the fish are going out of the pond, and like, I don't know what's happening. What if you lose your preps in this all-important time, like me? This is a critical time where you need to be building everything to the uber for self-sufficiency, as this thing's going to roll. I can't build back up a flock to lay eggs in like a month. That's just impossible. Unless I'm buying chickens in like, what, 30, 40 bucks each? It's not, it's impossible. So anyway, thanks for joining. We tons to talk about tonight. And yeah, man, the floor is yours.
Well, if you go back to our shows 2 years ago, when they were kind of, maybe a year and a half ago, it's about 2 years ago now, when they were wrapping the video, the cooperative video, when they were, that special piece of entertainment that was given to the whole world. That's what I like to call it. But right when you were, talking about that, I was reading an article. I'm showing that on the screen now. That kind of linked to what you were saying. Toposphere's holiday warning as more cases of deadly flu bug that causes paralysis detected in Spain. I've actually been seeing a lot of these type of food warnings, things like that. But as I was alluding to a couple of years ago, we were talking about, the end of things, and that most likely it wouldn't be gone, that they would bring it back. And I even went as so far to say that maybe the next time something goes around, it might be a little more dangerous or deadly than the last time, because the story of the boy who cried wolf, comes to mind with today's world. And, nobody believed the kid when the wolf finally was attacking and wanted to eat him and stuff. He cried wolf so many times. But what if, the wolf really is at the door and people cried about it so long? And that made me think about this, David. And I want you to take this really serious, because this fits in to the way that the Western world is going. I was thinking about your problem that you were having with the chickens. And, I have an excellent solution to that. What you need to do is get a 5x5 board and put a sign on it that says no claws, no fangs, no teeth. This is a claw-free zone, teeth-free zone, and there are no killing chickens is against the rules. And if you put that sign out there, I'm sure the raccoons, the bears, the poachers, the eagles, the falcons, whatever, the hawks, whatever you got around there, will totally respect that sign if you just tell them that it's a claw, a talon-free zone. Maybe, if you could tell them that, then that'll solve all the problems. I mean, that's how things work, evidently. But back in reality world, it really makes you wonder if we start having some kind of actual, food emergency. We've been warning about it, for years, the possibility that situations could easily turn on a dime and end the stable life that we know. And I want to take you back to Maui. And so now that there's so many headlines out, I'm allowed to read headlines from mainstream media. And one thing they all agree on is something that I've said on this show and my channel many, many, many times. If anything ever happens, you're on your own. There ain't nobody coming to save you. Nobody's going to come help you. You might have a few neighbors or friends if you have a community set up. I'm not talking about that. But as far as, the whole thing, nobody's coming to help you. And look at this, headline that everybody's absorbing worldwide now is Maui residents who disobeyed the government, disobeyed law enforcement, disobeyed the emergency services, and disobeyed barricades that were just there that said, hey, no, don't go past this. Those people lived. There's no question about it. Those who did not, they died in their cars as the fire approached them, and they were good citizens, and they listened to the authorities to the T there and just stayed there, even though they were telling them, don't believe your lying eyes, go back, don't worry about it, we have it under control. It wasn't true. Your lying eyes were right. The fire was coming and you should have left, but they didn't. But the people who did, the people probably like you and I and a lot of people that listen to this channel would have said, no way. I'm going around that. I'm getting out of here. I got my go bag. I got my stuff. I'm out. So the people that survived, they survived with only what they had on them or what was in their car at the time. And the sad truth is it sounds like thousands of people didn't have that same kind of luck because either the incompetent government helped contribute to the situation, and then, made it worse by giving bad directions, misinformation, and illegitimate orders to not pass barricades that had no reason to be there. I mean, think about it. If you're trying to evacuate people and save people, the last thing you do is set up barricades and borders and, stopping free flow of traffic and escape paths. And, and if you're government, you probably shouldn't turn off the water, if it's a fire. I'm just saying. And it goes on and on. So what is the message here? The deadly Maui fires. See, a Freudian slip there. Maui fires. Many had no warning and no way out. Those who dodged a barricade survived. You notice how they don't really tell you right there. But what does it mean that they dodged the barricade? Well, it means that they didn't listen to authoritative sources for their information. It means that they had critical thinking skills and deductive logic, and they said, you know what? I don't think so. I'm getting out of here. And that's what happened. That's how the cookie crumbled. And speaking of sicknesses, they say August 24th, which is today, is America's sickest day of the year. So get ready to be sick because the sickness is coming back, just like you said. I think your sources are right. Mask mandates reemerge amid upturn in the the cooperative video of the world. As supposedly cases are going up. New variants are coming out just in time for this fall's collection. So don't forget to get out there and get your up-to-date fashion, your face fashion, and get all the protocols done if you're one of the people that listens to authoritative sources. If you're not one of those people, it's about to be some interesting times. And they're floating the ideas that not just from sickness and fears of sickness, but maybe we should just close up cities altogether just because humans are dangerous. Humans are bad for the environment. So if we lock them all down, in 15-minute cities and keep them caged, keep them at the zoo, they won't be problems for us. And maybe we could just take all of their land in the process of moving them off. And it sounds like what was that thing that they did in the Americas when we expanded out west and, people already kind of lived on the land and then emergencies found their way to those people and we helped them out by putting them, in segregated little spots and they just had to stay there. What was it? A reservation. They're going to reserve places for us. And, there's a great Native American activist called Russell Means. And one of the things he said, was that everybody in America is the new Native Americans. Congratulations, you earned it. And if you don't be careful, the government will do to you what they've always done to Americans, and that's round you up, put you on camps, and if you try to run, they'll kill you. I mean, and that's not me saying that. That's a famous Native American activist talking about not only present times and the way that the government was going in the early 2000s before he passed away, but the entire history of America and the way that they treat Americans, government versus people. And it's not like, I'm advocating for there to be a versus, but it just seems like that there is, especially in instances like Maui, where the authoritative forces and the authoritative sources of information had it all wrong and cost a lot of people their lives. And really, there's no question at this point. The only question really is, was it negligence? Was it ignorance? Was it laziness? What was it? It really doesn't matter at this point for the people that succumbed to democide. And that's what I'm calling it. That's death by government. The number one killer of people throughout our entire history of, civilization.
Yeah, it's super incredibly sad, some of these chapters of history. Because I live down here in East Tennessee, and that's where the Trail of Tears ran through. And whether you're at Chota or Tokwa, or wherever you go to some of these places that have these massive cities of like 40,000 people, all rounded up, and you got to think about how remote it was in the 1800s. And, just a factoid about that, those that did survive, that did not, get rounded up, that fled to the mountains, they ended up joining the Confederacy. And they were some of the most ferocious, terrifying fighters there was legends about how ferocious and ghostly and ninja-like, and just left nothing, left for anybody who would come in these areas. They'd send 100 guys in and 0 came out, like this kind of thing. The only reason that it ended is because the Civil War ended. And it does seem that, you just keep going back to chapter history to look at, when something gets pushed up to the wall, yeah, there's a conflagration and things get burned down. And then there's the same system that resets again, and then it starts all over. That's been like that for 6,000 years. And then I'm starting to think, okay, the Sumerians talking about just dropping completely complex civilization. Geez, I wonder if the same family's money controlled, is still in power, because, eventually the people come to a point where they're like, no more. And that's the sort of reset on the clock here. I had an interesting conversation with somebody about the 2019 debacle with the central bank lending, and they called it the overnight repo rate. And I had conversations, about this up until today, and somebody sparked the thought with me. B&E, thanks for rekindling the thought so I could bring it back to tonight's show. Was in 2019. The overnight repo market, which is where, you need an overnight loan and you use it for 8 hours, and one bank will lend money to another bank. Well, that was in free fall, where the U.S. government was almost giving out $1 trillion per night in overnight loans to keep the system afloat. But see, parallel with that, running in the same track, remember all those street protests of everybody protesting central banks at that time? They were pointing at the correct problem in society. They were pointing out central banking, the way they're devaluing the currency, the corruption that's in that, the buying of armies, politicians, and countries themselves, the mineral resources, etc. People were pointing to the actual real villain and culprit, that central banking system. And I do believe there were 22 countries that were in simultaneous protest every.
And that concludes this evening's program. No, just kidding. I think he got cut off. I don't know if I'm live. We'll see. It's one of these momentary technological issues here. Let me check the replay and see if I'm talking. Or is it both of us? Maybe I'm talking to myself. Nope, I'm here. So we'll just wait for David to reconnect. In the meantime, speaking of old timies, I've been holding up an article about Biden's alcohol czar warns Americans could soon be told to limit themselves to just 2 beers per week under strict new booze guidelines. Now, they cite the risk of cancer, heart disease, and other issues, but what they don't cite is that most of the alcohol, or beer that is, a lot of the labels are having trouble right now, as that they are being boycotted. And also think about this, with the limited amount of corn being produced around the world, the high fructose corn syrup that they use to make most beers now is in limited demand. So as you can see, as the food prices go up, so does every product, because they're all intertwined. And here's David DuByne joining.
From the cutoff, when I started to talk about central banking, that is so interesting, because I don't even know where I fell off that mind thought there.
Right. Well, we could get right back into it because it's all being centralized. I was telling the people while you were gone, I was reading this article about Biden's alcohol czar warning Americans that we might be limited to, just 2 beers a week, and strict new booze guidelines they're proposing, basically, essentially, prohibition. And the article cites cancer, heart disease, etc. But what they don't cite is what the beer is made out of now. Most of the beer now is made out of high fructose corn syrup, which comes from GMO corn, which is in limited supply because guess what? We share that with the cattle and all of these other things. It's all intertwined with ethanol. I mean, think about all of these factors of the economy, from the beer to the food to the, cattle production, all the GMO stuff that they eat. And then on top of that, you have this idea of prohibition, which out west, and I wanted to bring this up later, it seems that the backwards prohibition of marijuana on the West Coast is funding a lot of leftist organizations because conservatives and right-leaning people kind of, put their nose up to that or have a bad taboo about it. But the other side of the spectrum is beginning to make billions. And this is something that right-leaning conservative investors are losing out on because, they don't want to be associated with marijuana. However, it's ironic that one is exploding and they're talking about limiting the other, like if we live in the 20s, which is another correlation to, financial problems on the horizon.
Yeah, somewhere I got cut off in there about the central banking, and I'll come back to that. But again, the booze guidelines. Okay, so what is it? It's the grains that make our alcohol. It's the grains that feed our animals. Are you getting the message yet? They're telling you to stop eating meat. And now they're going to tell you to stop drinking alcohol because they don't have enough grain in the system any longer. We've rolled over last year to the point where we don't even grow enough on the planet to feed the planet. We're digging into those carryover stocks. And as a matter of fact, when I was on Mike Adams' program last week, I had gotten the newest USDA report that showed that there is 0 wheat left in storage or stores or warehouses. They call it a carryover stocks, like how much you had last year that you can bring into this year. It just had 2 dashed lines in where they don't want to put a 0. That would scare people, so they put 2 dashed lines in it. But really think about the messaging of what we're seeing in the world now. See, Ransom and I, we've been talking for years now saying that the food shortages are coming because, the solar magnetic field's going out of kilter and canceling themselves on the sun and the surface layer and the subsurface layer. They're going into a 0 point where they're actually canceling each other out. Well, that's going to have ramifications and real huge effects on our planet in terms of the jet streams and the cloud cells, which is creating this super hot heat dome. Well, that's because the hurricane went up well into central Canada and kind of blocked off that flow. So until that record cold Arctic front that's going to be coming down and breaking through that heat dome comes swinging through in the first weeks of September here, it's going to be a little warm. Yeah, because the entire flow of that normal system got cut off because that hurricane that just is going up through Canada or from California up through Canada has cut those normal flows of those, jet streams themselves. So that's why they call it a heat dome. It got blocked off because of the hurricane. Okay, the messaging we're getting here is, you got to do this, that, and the other because of, they're saying CO2. I'm saying it's from the sun's magnetic field now affecting our planting and harvesting dates and the ability for us to grow food as a species on this planet. We are at the point now where we don't grow enough to feed the planet. Like, you can do some calculations out, and I've seen many a calculation, and I've done some myself, just rudimentary, looking at the world grain, and then seeing what they have for possible yields compared to what is in the carryover stocks globally. And that includes everything, the sorghum, the barley, the millet, you're going into different kind of stuff, down into like, the ancient grains or more of regional kind of traded things, because sorghum's just, you don't really trade sorghum on a futures market. I mean, there's like one contract that comes out, I think, out of the CME that does sorghum. But you got heaps that are going for corn, right? There's a huge difference in that. And then the different types of wheat as well traded globally. But we are really at the point now where at the current estimates, 10 years is when we use up all the grains that are stored on the planet. 10. And there will be nothing left in carryover stocks. And really at that point, when we're looking around 2030 or 2032, something like this, what we grow is what we get. And we're going to be growing far, far, far less. So the population has to decline with that or move in tandem. And see, that's the scariest thing is if I'm just some dude out here doing videos on my own research that's publicly available, and I can come up with timelines and grains and upsets in our jet streams where the planting and the harvesting dates will be so erratic that we can't really count on that much grain coming in any longer. If I can do that, like the amount of data that they really have in terms of satellite data and like the 10.7 meter flux coming off the sun and different kind of things that I can't find in real time, and especially with the looking at the iron isotopes in terms of temperatures coming off the photosphere of the sun, like that, they quit printing that off Lizard. Like all those, chromium as well was another one that used to be an indicator of heat increases that would come off the sun, off the photosphere. They stopped printing that data. And swarm too, you can't even find the magnetic field changes on the planet anymore. They stopped printing all the swarm data. Like that's all, it's offline. You can't even find that anymore. So those data sets, which used to be publicly available, or it gave pretty decent, okay, you can see it changing. I wish I would have screen grabbed more. All I'm going to say to everybody out there, please screen grab as much data as you can. When you come across a factoid, screen grab it because it's going to disappear. Now, coming in with this, what scares me the most is they have the forecast out for how much food we can grow based on supply chain breakdowns, magnetic field changes, and it seems like there's a concerted effort to make that population match with the declines in the food supply. And just another way they're doing it right now, if I didn't hear about these booze guidelines, but that is absolutely because of a lack of grain production on the planet. And getting you to eat less meat or stop eating meat, that is absolutely because of less grain production on this planet. They can't both go hand in hand. Like really, you got to look at it as just a logical, just the most driest English humor. We don't grow enough food. Oh, wait, they're going to make an excuse for that. Okay, what would that be? We can't tell the people that we're going to have a grain shortage and we're going to have global food shortages by 2028. We can't tell them that. We're going to have to make a different excuse. Oh, stop eating meat. Everybody that's out there witnessing these gargantuan changes in the atmosphere and, these heat and the cool events and rain events, they made the excuse for you called global warming. So when you saw it and I saw it and everybody across the planet saw it occurring right now, amplifying, there would already be an excuse ready for you to explain it away. Like this whole thing about the new masks and the new mask mandates. I want to have masks with an American flag printed on it that said, "Make America Great Again." Remove your globally aligned local politician in cuffs. That's what mine's going to say. Because for some reason, they've all taken the bait, hook, line, and sinker, or they're promised a seat on the ark, one of the two. And none of it's good for us out here, because what I'm seeing is just complete lies to explain away all the things they want you to do. But if you roll it back, really, just the simplest thing, 8,000 years of history rolled into a few sentences. Civilization depends on food production. If you can't grow enough food, your civilization collapses. And we are in the midst of a civilization collapse. So for me, I'm really not looking at the periphery of the economy is the secondary thing. I understand if there's not that has been a fingerprint of these events, these grand solar minimum fingerprints through history, population migration, government changes in the way it oversees the citizens after it's overthrown, and lack of food production, which leads to the collapse of the economy. So you can't tell me with a straight face that all these forecasts coming out that the amplification started in 2020. And we're now seeing it to the point where this is what I was, predicting in my channel, in the DAP 2030 channel, is what you're seeing now is what we're going to get. And this is the beginning of it, and it's going to amplify like crazy. Oh man, we've seen nothing yet. If you thought you think you've seen some big stuff, this is nothing. This is just the cusp of it. I was off by 2 years. I thought what we're seeing now would have occurred in 2021 to 2022. Oh, actually about a year and a half, year and a half. But the events we're seeing now with the magnitude of events and the frequency of these extremes, I thought would be occurring at the end of 2021, somewhere in that 2021 range, latter half of the year into 2022. So, my forecast is off by a year to year and a half. But we're at it, and I don't care what you come at it. You cannot stop this thing except get prepared. So the only reason we're having this conversation is because our forefathers got prepared. They were the smart ones that didn't obey the authority and said, hey, you know what? All these people telling me nothing's going to happen are the ones going, hey, I'm going to scratch my head and something might happen here. And that's the reason you're having the conversation and that you've been born on this planet. Is because somebody took the foresight to say, hey, something feels like it feels wrong and I am going to prepare. Because think about back in the Roman Empire, how many of these jars and vessels do we find still to this day in archaeological digs? Like they were stocking away a heap of stuff. The Phoenicians as well, man. Everywhere you go, there was those like massive amounts of jars everywhere in these storehouses and warehouses. Phoenicians, man, they were on it too. Which just tells me and leads me to one thing here, Ransom, is it's cyclical. It happened to the Phoenicians and their civilization. It happened to the Romans and theirs. Happened to ours, modern minimum. We saw the collapse and the reemergence 400 years ago. I mean, it's just a thing. And we're back at it again. And all these reasons of why you need to do this, why this SUV did that, why you need to stop eating meat, why you need to stop drinking alcohol, why you can't fly anymore. All these things are leading into this atmospheric cavitation, smashing your airplane apart with 5-pound hailstones. Yeah, that's a reason I don't want to fly. It's not because of CO2. I don't know, man. It's a crazy, all these reasons they're giving you to stop your current way of life is all based on lack of food production. And now it's just so front and center. We're here.
And it seems like they kind of rub it in our face, in my opinion. I think other people may see different things when they look through the news articles. But I could just show you exactly the stuff that you're talking about, the attack on meat eating, food. It's all tied together. Almost every single article intertwines like one of those, what is that, an Afghan? It's all connected. And I'll just run down the headlines with a quick comment about each thing and how they're connected to the other. Let's go back to the beer thing. They want to limit people's beers, which means that there will become an underground, a black market for alcohol. It's prohibition. But don't worry about it. Who's going to investigate you for that? Well, people like these DEA agents that can't even pass lie detector tests. That's who they're hiring. USDA's war on small farms, another attack on meat, chickens, specifically they're showing there, but they also mean cattle, beef, and other things that feed your family. Here it goes again. Like I said before, paralysis detected in Spain from a bug from food, another thing to scare you. But don't worry about it. Life out there all around us, evidently. NASA scientist admits she absolutely certain that there is alien life and reveals the best places to find it nearby. Another indication that they're going to add that to the cards of perceived reality. Whether it's real or not, I don't know. But here's an answer right here to the problem with not only meat, but, being mauled to death by wildlife. It turns out the solution is guns. A state plagued by bear encounters turns to an old solution, guns. I'm not saying that you might use that for other situations or anything like that, but, it does. It's a hammer, and it does, hammer nails in whenever there's nails, if you know what I mean. But let's go down the list here. Fukushima radioactive waste dumped into the ocean may cause mutant animals, says experts. It's a long time since the Fukushima disaster, and everybody was up in arms talking about the possibilities and the outcomes that could possibly go wrong from dumping large amounts of radioactive waste into the ocean. But don't worry about it. From the Bikini Island experiments with nuclear bombs, we know that any animal that mutates is going to die itself. If it lays eggs, either it's going to go extinct because the eggs are not viable, or there will be a completely new species of animal. Case in point, there is a shark species that lives around the Bikini Islands that does not have a dorsal fin due to a mutation caused by radiation, but it keeps on going about its life living. And as you remember, scientists say that Chernobyl calls a paradise of man-free zone, area without people. And then here we go. You remember the monkeys that fell out on the highway. Well, I've been following the story of the crazy monkeys across the U.S. and their connection to outbreaks or possible outbreaks of deadly disease. Here's one that just caught my eye right here. Weird monkey sightings spread across Florida. City and cops say, I knew it wasn't crazy. Well, guess what? In Florida, there are several islands that house genetic experiment monkeys, meaning that they're monkeys that have syphilis, all kinds of gross stuff, AIDS, bad stuff that they could give to other people. The Save the World people didn't want them to get destroyed. They came from right out here near me. One group, at least, from the White Sands Research Facility at Holloman Air Force Base, in which they were testing chimpanzees for all kinds of stuff. And then later they sold those monkeys to a pharmaceutical company that's just down the road from me that did further tests on them for years. And then they sent them, and this isn't the only case of this, from these labs over into Florida, gave them an island and put them all out there. And they're kind of, wild, they could get loose, whatever. But that's just the chimpanzees. But they also have herpes-infested islands of monkeys, and all of these are just out there. Any minute could spark a new news headline that everybody will be interested in, but that's okay. Listen to your authoritative sources, just like in Maui there. The mandates are coming back. Of course, they're going to be pushing that on us. And here again, just all through this fateful decision in Maui, firefighters left the scene. They let the blaze begin and its deadly march unchallenged. More of government failure. And then, of course, the ones that didn't listen to government, they lived. And then we'll get on here into the financial market, and it just goes crazy, crazy, crazy. We're sick. War. We talk about that a lot, but every sign is that they are just right at the cusp of being ready for this international war, the World War III scenario. Early intelligence suggests that the mercenary that was threatening to throw a coup in Russia, supposedly his plane blew up there. Is he dead? They don't know. They found the bodies, but the heads were missing. So I don't know if that was to identify that they were, indeed the targets that were the victims of the bomb, or is it a fake out? Who knows? In the backdrop, Ukrainians' Navy and military intelligence carrying out special operations, obviously backed by Western powers, into Russian-occupied areas. And then it's all about the drones. It's all about the drones. Don't worry about it. It's going to be drone amazing. And this leads in how they're about to restrict technology for the public, for the citizens, for you and me. And I'll show you why. U.S. allies are amazing, dangerous times, says the outgoing Navy commander in Japan, because he knows what's going on in his area. Norway sends more F-16s to Ukraine. Chinese nuclear sub crashes near disputed waters. Ain't that nice? More nuclear material out there in the Pacific Ocean for all you lovers of that. And here is a point that I was talking about earlier. Not only is cannabis could be the answer to starving millions that they just don't use or refuse to use, or for whatever reason don't grow giant crops of it to feed millions of people around the world, but bipartisan group of lawmakers pressured DOJ to answer on illegal Chinese marijuana grows in the United States. That's right. That's more of that leftist money leaving the country and going to organizations that don't have your best interest. And then back to Wall Street, they're all talking about bankruptcy on Wall Street, creating funds for, what are they going to do when everything crashes? Food stamps expansion linked to 15% increase in your grocery store prices. There's more expensive food, but they're destroying the food in the background. And this show that they're showing, I don't know if you watched the presidential debate, but it was hilarious, like a made-for-TV drama. And in the backdrop, you see President Trump's mugshot. It looks like he's given that gangsta view at the thing. It doesn't look like he's worried. And if you read any of the indictments toward him, basically what they're saying is that you cannot disagree with the authoritative sources or we will jail you. But back to the drones. This is why I think that there's going to be a big shrink on the availability of technology for the public because of how the militaries around the world and forces are using this new technology in new and creative combinations. Mexican cartels increasingly using drone-dropped and roadside bombs, and this is along the border that I told you is increasingly becoming a combat zone. The wrong people just got their hands on elite drone over in Europe, and it's on and on and on with this. Chechen fighters, they're claiming that the Ukrainians are flying drones that have claws that come down and abduct people. I kid you not. And then downgrades, the financial crisis continues. More banks get their credit downgraded. More Americans are having a hard time paying their big credit card bills, which ties into those same banks, losing their credit. Home purchase applications plummet to 28-year low. Nobody's buying a home because they can't afford it. And BRICS nations will blunt Western dominance. And this is all just more and more. It just piles on. More banks get the credit downgrading as financial crisis continues. And then there's new stuff with AI that you just wouldn't believe. AI cameras in the UK start surveilling inside vehicles, which also means they can surveil inside your home. Google and Microsoft are supercharging their AI, and this says for deep fake porn. And this is a misdirection headline because what they're really saying is that Google and Microsoft are taking the lead in artificial imagery. And these are the number one sources in internet news. In other words, they are the authoritative sources. So if they're using supercharged AI for different reasons, you can bet that it can be for nefarious reasons. And then get this, nothing can be copyrighted if it's AI generated, U.S. judge says. That means all of your works of art that you did with AI, copies of actors, copies of anybody, face swaps, deep fakes, all of that stuff, it can't be copyrighted. So, basically that means you can go at it and use all of it you want. But in the backdrop also, and this is the main one that we're talking about, and this is kind of links to President Trump. It links to the food crisis. It links to the narration of the war theater, that's going on, all of it. The UN is building a digital army to fight what it calls deadly disinformation. That means basically what me and David DuByne talk about. So everything that we're talking about on this program is going to be listed under this dangerous misinformation, just us having an opinion. And think about it real hard. Now, I'm not even a fan of Trump because of the warp speed speeding ticket he got going through the school zones in the American public, just ripped right through with that warp zone. I don't really like him for that. But, other than that, I can see what they're doing, and he could be a participant in it for all I know. Like I said, it's like a made-for-TV drama. But what they're essentially saying and trying to set the precedent of is that they can convict people for disagreeing with the authoritative sources. And that means the UN world government army of fighters to fight the misinformation, all of the fact checkers, YouTube, all of it. That's what we're looking at, is a complete destruction of the availability of the peasant to not only use technology in the way that they want to, but to access real information that's not filtered through the lens of an AI-controlled, top-down propaganda machine, something that the makers of Project Mockingbird, they thought of it, but they would have never in their wildest dreams imagined the amount of control and content created by artificial algorithms, learning machines, and a corrupt grid of the matrix we live in.
They kind of painted a picture of all these monkeys with gonorrhea and syphilis on an island, like dripping all over the branches. It's that yuck, dude. Oh my gosh. I had to address a couple of your points there, though. So I want to come back to some of the information I was giving from a source that I do trust about. They're going to close down the stores and the credit card. So think about this. You know, you said you had that article up there. People are having a difficult time paying their credit card debt off. So if this is going to be the only way you're going to be able to purchase goods in the 2.0, whatever they're going to call it this time, it's sure isn't going to be the vid again. They're going to have to change the name. But it'll be a 2.0 of that same protocol. So if the only way you can possibly buy anything is paying online for it and then having somebody deliver it in a hazmat suit to you in your car. First of all, I was told there was going to be rations on this. Like, you can't just order 30 of something. But then secondly, if people can't use their credit cards and they're having a difficult time paying them off and they become unemployed because of this new thing with even more draconian lockdowns where they're really going to lock up all the supermarkets, big box stores, you're not going in anywhere. Because see, they knew, and this is another point that was made, was they knew there was going to be mass non-compliance. And the easiest way to do that is just say, well, you don't have a choice then to even not comply because none of the stores are going to be open for you to not comply to go into. Your choice will be pay for it by credit card or you don't get it. And this is where they're going to roll out the police and army into the suit, I don't know how many there'll be, but there'll be some sort of presence at these lines of delivery, you know. So it goes back into, what if I'm just going to go story here. Okay, let's say I use my credit card too much, I maxed it out, and I can't buy anything anymore. And then I say, hey, Dad, you know, can you help me? And my dad said, yeah, sure. And then says, I'll buy that for you. Okay, you need to go pick it up. But what if they start asking for ID to be able to pick it up? But see, that's going to limit, because let's say my dad said, yeah, Dave, I'll buy stuff for you. And then I need 10 of something, and then he needs 10 of something. Well, the rations are coming in, so you're not going to be able to get 20. So even a family member buying for another family member because they're cut off from either their credit card, they lost their job, or they just earned too much in debt or whatnot, at that point, that's going to create a huge problem where even families within each other that have the means to buy this goods and services won't be able to. And see, that comes back to nobody's going to help you again. And the scary thing is, you know, what happens if you don't have access to a credit card? What if your bank drops you and your credit cards get totally cut off because you had the wrong political viewpoint or the wrong environmental viewpoint or the wrong economic viewpoint or the wrong, you know, the sky is blue, it's green actually, the sky is green. You said, no, it's blue, you got the wrong sky color viewpoint, and boom, they just cut you off and say your credit card, you know, you're unbanked and we're going to keep all your deposits because you can't come into the branch to claim it, and we'll mail you a check 365 business days after we resolve this for the next 3 months or something. You know, at that point, you won't have any credit cards, so how are you going to purchase it? At that point, you couldn't. This is the whole you know, email chain sent to me was like this whole credit card thing to get you on it for the payment to be able to pick your stuff up, plus the appeal, which I thought was the most interesting out of all this. You know, every single bit of produce, please warn you, I'm just trying to warn everybody. If it comes to this, I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying if, there's a possibility it could. If it does, if anything that you buy as a fresh produce item will be coated with that appeal coating on it. And that includes every single leaf of lettuce that you purchase, every orange that you buy, every banana that you would get, every apple, anything that you could buy that is a vegetable or a fruit will be covered in this appeal stuff. But see, I'm wondering if they're going to take it into the dried beans also. Because as it was explained in the very beginning of this, and this email chain that I got, was the whole guise of doing this to introduce the appeal into every food source across the planet all at the exact same time is that they couldn't guarantee the safety of the food that's being delivered to you in your car after you purchase it with a credit card. You got to think about that. You might think that, okay, well, it's only going to be an orange, it's only going to be a banana, it'll be a lettuce leaf. But what if it truly is they coat all the beans with that stuff too? You know, okay, what if they coat all the rice with it before it goes in the bag? You know, I'm starting to think deeper. Like I'm really thinking, well, I need to get prepared now because, you know, these things that are coming down the pike, like it the BRICS thing is its own catalyst of a lot of stuff I'm seeing as well. So, okay, we got subset A of things going on with the Earth's magnetic field, and we can't grow enough food currently to feed the population, so we're digging into the carryover stocks of the planet. Okay, I get that. That would be enough to upset civilization itself. But now we're coming into something super urgent, super fast. So think we're at the end of August, so we got September, October, November, December. We got 4 months. And Saudi Arabia formally joins BRICS along with United Arab Emirates and Indonesia. So those are all major oil producers. Like the only way the US dollar is not going to go into complete collapse and hyperinflation and free fall, the only way to stop that is going to war. That is the only possible way. Because they were looking at some of the projections that I saw was $150 billion per day that was going to be traded outside the US dollar. So after 10 days, you're talking about $1 trillion worth of goods and services moving across the planet, 3 trillion per month. That's not inside the USD ecosystem, which was exclusively just even last year, 100% inside the ecosystem of the US dollar. That's per month. They're talking about $30+ trillion a year that's not going to be spent in the US dollar ecosystem. It's actually 36 trillion if you want to do the exact calculations. But think about that for a moment. Like $36 trillion that would have been moved in our banking system using the dollar exclusively for trade in said goods of oil, minerals, energy is not going to be any longer. Now think about subtracting $36 trillion out of the cash flow of the United States. Like, what is that going to do? There's going to be a huge amount of money that rolls home. And I was with Lynette Zhang on a talk the other day. I'm still going to produce that. Should be up tomorrow for those of you on the Adapt 2030 channel. So we were talking about, what happens, like really what percentage of the global GDP needs to turn over and turn off the dollar before it roosts home. Because I had a couple questions about, just those of you that might not have heard this before, like the way we fund our debt in America is we offer treasury bills to the rest of the world. We offer our debt at, whatever percent interest that somebody will get. 6%, 7%, you buy an American bond for a 1 year or a 3 year or a 10 year, our government will pay you 7%. If you hold on to that for a year or 2 years or 3 years, 10 years. But the last auction they had, the most recent, 40% of all bonds that were offered to the world went unsold. So our government, the Federal Reserve, had to print the money to buy our own bonds back from ourselves. So what you saw on that bond issuance was whatever's not bought by the rest of the world, the Federal Reserve just prints the money, but that devalues our dollar every single time that happens. Now we're looking at a 40% non-buy on this bond issuance. And as we march into January, we're looking at something like a 70%, 80% no buy bid, no bid on those bonds. Which means that let's say 50 billion comes out for issuance. I'll use it 100 billion because it's easy math. So the US government's going to offer $100 billion to the world for US government treasury bills. And 80 billion of that has no bids on it, and only 20 billion of that was bought. Well, the US government's just going to print that extra 80 billion and buy those bonds. They're going to print it out of thin air, and then that is going to be sent out to you in inflation. And this number of 100 billion is a very, 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 can I say it again, very small number in comparison to how much money moves through the planet in terms of treasury issuance per year from the US government. Trillions with a T is what's issued. That's how we fund our debt. That's how we fund the United States. That's how we keep programs moving, is somebody else buys our debt. They buy the treasury bills that we promised to pay back in the future. Some of them are 30-year bills too. And that's, you know, like it used to be AAA graded investments. So like, that was the number one thing you could do in a long term, because you knew you were going to get 3 to 5%, and you know, that was a no-brainer.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, ITM Trading is a precious metals company that has been in business for over 27 plus years, with a mission to educate and empower individuals to hedge against inflation, mitigate financial risk, and prepare for the Great Reset. ITM Trading has spent the more than 27 years developing a team of expert researchers and gold and silver analysts to make this possible. Simply put, we build strategies which are historically proven to protect your wealth and assets through any economic downturn. Your journey starts with a strategy that will educate and empower you to thrive during the current economic crisis. These resources have been developed for the sole purpose of equipping you with the knowledge you deserve regarding the truth of our volatile financial system. ITM Trading was born out of our founder, Craig Griffin's principle that it takes more work to be honest and to educate people, but it's the right way to do business. Over 27 plus years, and still we are family-led. By leaning into Craig's words and prioritizing relationships over transactions, we've continued evolving. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call. Dial the digit 866-834-1422. That's 866-834-1422.
You have a choice in today's unstable world. Eat the bugs or plan ahead. Eat the bugs or buy the storable foods. When a disaster strikes, we may find ourselves confined to our homes or shelters for days or weeks. In such situations, having a supply of nutritious, non-perishable, and easy-to-prepare food is vital. So what essential foods should we include in our emergency survival food kit? Let's explore some key items that are not only non-perishable, but also wholesome and easy to prepare. Dried fruits are an excellent addition to your emergency food supply. They are lightweight, compact, and provide a natural sweetness and energy boost. Energy bars are compact, portable, and nutritious. They are a convenient on-the-go snack and provide an instant energy boost when needed. By incorporating these additional items, your emergency survival food kit becomes even more comprehensive and capable of sustaining you and your family during extended periods of disruption. Having a well-prepared emergency food supply can make a significant difference in natural disasters or unexpected emergencies. It provides reassurance and a sense of control, knowing that you and your loved ones have the necessary sustenance to endure challenging circumstances. Beyond the tangible benefits, building an emergency food kit is an act of responsible citizenship. By taking personal preparedness seriously, we reduce the burden on emergency services and relief organizations, allowing them to focus their efforts on those in dire need of assistance. Investing time and thought into creating your emergency food supply is a proactive step towards safeguarding your well-being and your family. With the right food supplies, you can maintain your physical and mental well-being and face any unforeseen event with resilience and strength. HeavensHarvest.com. Use promo code ADAPT and save 15% at checkout. Don't be forced to eat Z-bugs.
Oh, I can't believe I had the mute on. Welcome back for the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. Before we go on the break, I was trying to get really deep into explain why, the United States, the only option it has is to go to war when this announcement or usage of the BRICS currency or some sort of other trading mechanism goes way outside the dollar for oil sales. Like there's really no other choice as to why. It's going to be a scary world because if the dollar's not used and we're buying back 80% of debt issuance. There we go. Turn that off, mute that down. So that was the reason that, if it's like that and we have to buy back our debt continuously, we're going to be running into something like, multiple trillions of dollars per month that we'll have to print ourselves just to buy it back. Like it'll go into a hyperinflation event. So as I was trying to come to the point, you're going to be on your own, like Ransom said earlier. So please, continue to prepare. But I have a friend who actually has a distillery here in East Tennessee. He's up in Knoxville. And they contract grow the grains, a specific type of corn that's an old heirloom variety that they use for some of their whiskeys that they do. So they have corn whiskey, corn mash, and they also do some things with barley mixed in there. So I've seen the process of them distilling a few things, and they also do brandies, which is a little bit different, which I like brandy far better than whiskeys, but you can do it yourself with fruit. So as we come into the second hour here, I'll get a little bit deeper into that, and also the raccoon repellent, because a few different types of raccoon repellent that I've been looking into. I've lost a lot of chickens. The first day I went out, we had 4 bantams totally disappear. And then I found one with its head eaten off. And then the other ones completely disappeared, like totally disappeared, not even a feather left. And I thought, all right, is that a hawk or is that a raccoon? But see, here's the thing. This little bantams are real small. They're like half the size of a regular chicken, maybe even smaller. But the rooster was kind of vicious and mean, even though it was real small, but we called it cricket because it always sneak up and you go, and then it would hit you. But I like that little guy because, every time he would do that, I'd pick him up and, like pick him up and pet him and stuff and chase him around the enclosure until I grabbed him and picked him up and petted him. And you're gonna hit me on the back of the leg? Well, I'm going to pick you up and pet you, man. And it was just like the cutest little rooster, like little tiniest gray. Like it was almost a mini me rooster. And it was such the coolest bird. And then, one of the very first ones we got, been almost 2 years now, we call it a big orange because originally when we got it as a chick, it was all orange. But it changed color as it got older. And we're in Tennessee, so we call it big orange. And that one's gone too. It just disappeared this afternoon. It made me so sad. That was my favorite one. Dude, it was like a pet. And I never thought in my wildest dreams ever I'd say, oh, I feel sad because I lost a chicken. But that chicken was more than, it was like a pet. That thing followed you around. You could pick it up. It was super soft. And it was the coolest bird. I'd never really had chickens or birds before, but this thing was like something special. And it's really sad that 4 the first day, and then I got another 2 of our egg layers, which are barred rocks. And then, just before sunset tonight, I went around and checked on them. And before the program, I was going to go turn all the lights on out in the cage. And 5 out of the 7 little ones that we have that we're re-raising right now, gone, like without a trace. And I'm thinking, shoot. And then I finally spotted one of the guineas up in the tree, roosting up there. Must have got spooked and then went up to the tree. So, what are you going to have to do? That's the whole reason that this was called What Happens If Your Preps Disappear, Like, what if you lose your medical kit? Well, if I can distill alcohols, I can come back with my own rubbing alcohol pretty quick. And here's the whole thing. If you have a still, like a pot still or any kind of reflux stills, you can do distilled water with that. So if you say, well, I don't have a water resource, yeah, you can. You can use a still to get distilled water. You can also do essential oils with it, or you can make alcohol. So if you look at a still, don't think of it as just an alcohol making device. There's other options to do it. So if you have a still, you always have access to clean water. Because I don't care what kind of gunky funk water you have, you can put it, if you filter it out a little bit and you can put it and run it through a pot still, you're definitely going to have some distilled water that's drinkable at that point. And again, Revolution Radio, thank you for letting us talk tonight, live, uncensored. So if y'all out there consider a donation, Revolution Radio, it's in the top nav bar on the left. There are many ways to donate, because we are coming to a point now where, Ransom, you can explain what happened in Europe, because I'm not as versed on the new censorship laws coming out of Europe as you are. But again, we're coming to this time where we're going to have bolides rolling in a lot more, space debris coming in. We got magnetic field changes. You're going to have huge storms, like the most ferocious electrical storms you've ever seen. You're going to know why people used to run to the dolmens. Those rock enclosures that used to be around the planet, there were millions, plural, millions of those around the world before. You're going to understand why people fled underground to escape what's coming in the next year and a half. So anyway, Ransom, take us away. What do you got for me on the European thing here?
I'm not actually sure which one you're talking about. Are you talking about the whole UN digital army there to tell everybody that anything that they're not saying is deadly disinformation? Another global organization trying to police speech. It's kind of redundant at this point. We know that that's the plan globally, is to lock down information, not just lock down you and some kind of perceived climate threat or pandemic, but to lock down your entire spirit, ideas, and the evolving brain of the human being. This is what's being captured. This is what's being put into prison, in the prison planet. A whole generation of would-be slaves that are coming up in this new technocratic technological world with so many control mechanisms in place. It's so abundant, the amount of control mechanisms that have been put in place all the way for, I guess we could go back 2,000 years, starting off with religion, which is very strange because, we spent 2,000 years concentrating on the spirit of man, and then that time is over. So the religion time is over. So if you're with one of those groups, you can assume that that is going to be somewhere in the realm of hate speech and misinformation, if you believe, the books that you believe in. I have nothing against, people believing in what they want to believe in, but they are also going to have to be allies in the war for free speech. You can't have religion without free speech to some degree. You can't have your own ideas. You can't have political parties. You can't have educational groups. You can't do anything. It's basically Mao China. And that's the truth. And that's what nobody, I think, gets in our modern times, is that each one of these supposed democracies, or constitutional republics in our case, if they fall, you get a uniparty system in which they vote to get rid of any and all pushback. It kind of basically what's going on the world stage is there's a unnamed invisible entity out there. And let's say if we use the example of Saddam Hussein, if you ever watch the video when he told the little parliamentary government or whatever it was that he was taking control. And, several people jumped up and they claimed, hey, we have a constitution, we have rules, we have laws. And Saddam Hussein sat back in his chair, lit his cigar, smiled, and military troops came in and shot all of those people right outside the building that day. Basically, we're dealing with that in a world setting, except for, the Saddam Hussein figure. It's an invisible censoring agenda entity that we can't see because it's all compartmentalized and mixed up with, hundreds or even thousands of NGOs and people working against national boundaries, national sovereignties, and the idea from the beginning, which has to be 50 plus years old, is to end the idea of the nationalist. And they put a lot of negative connotations on that, stemming from World War II, where they had an example of a nationalist that had bad attributes. And now they're trying to put that on the world, that if you believe in or like or love your country or are patriotic towards your own country, wherever that may be, that nationalism is equivalent to what Mao said religion was, which is poison. Religion is poison. And Mao always told the truth as far as the power that he governed with is the power out of the end of a barrel of a gun. So like we were talking about earlier, a gun is the answer to, missing supplies or bad preps. And I can give you some ideas for your situation with the chickens. It's a mathematical problem. How many chickens were taken? Wait till the raccoons come back and take that many raccoons to supplement your meat supply. Now, I know the dead raccoons are just meat and they're not going to be laying eggs and all of that. I understand that. But that's one way to kind of get something back if you wanted to do that. And speaking of that, a lot of people forget that in tough times, there are other alternative sources of food. One idea with those raccoons, I'm telling you, you never answered me about the 5x5 sign. If you just told them no claws, no teeth, no talons, the chickens, the sheep should be fine and safe, right? I mean, as long as you put signs up around it saying it's a teeth-free zone and all that. But I have an idea because I've dealt with this exact situation working on farms, the raccoons stealing chickens and eggs and things like that. And basically what you have to do is get you some rat shot. It comes in different calibers for different guns. And then what you do is you take the rat shot and you take most of that out and really pack it either with plastic BBs, not the little steel coated ones that are in there, or some rock salt. And you have to shoot one of the biggest raccoons there, and not fatally. You want to give them a low impact shot that hurts and shocks them and scares them. And that raccoon, they are super intelligent. They will remember you. Now, they might break in your house and do something to you. They are little ninjas. No, I'm just joking. It'll scare them off. But that's only one troop. That's only that troop. So another troop will move into the territory after you do that, and you'll have the same problems. But I wanted to get into that topic, which is the title for tonight's show. What happens when you lose your preps? What happens if they go missing? Now, we're coming up on fall here, so the time for prepping for winter is kind of began. It's begun, and it'll be over soon. So I thought we'd go through this list of alternative sources that doesn't have anything to do with what you're growing, although you could multiply this by specifically making sure that these plants are growing around where you live. And other people are only going to recognize these as weeds and stuff that they wouldn't eat. So we'll go down the list. I'm sure you know a lot of them. So let's check it out here. Number one, the plantain plant, Plantago major or major. It's not related to the banana at all. It's a 3 to 5 parallel veins, rubbery feel on it, leaf. But they're good to eat raw.
Ransom, is that the thin-leafed or the thick-leafed plantain?
This is saying it's got a rubbery feel to it, so I'm guessing it's the thick leaf. It looks pretty thick and hardy, kind of like.
Those are the thick leaves. Yeah, because there's a thin-leaf variety also that you can eat as well. Both varieties are edible.
Right. And this is another thing, and a lot of these plants have dual purposes. Not only for eating, but for medicinal value. Like this one right here, it says they can also be mashed up and applied to bee stings for rapid relief, canceling the venom. You got your everyday dandelion. But I do want to note out that you don't want to do this in big fields in the city. You want to do it in between, in the alleys, in between properties, like we were talking about the other day. There's lots of properties that are overgrown and have these species growing it, but you don't want to eat that stuff that's out in the field, in the park. That stuff's covered in glyphosate, dog pee, etc. You don't want to eat that. So you want to find kind of secluded plants. But here's the dandelion.
Oh,
the
wait,
flowers
Ransom, could you come back to that picture for a second, the one of the plantain? Can you just, slide that back down for a second on the screen there?
Yeah, there you go.
Because those stamens also are edible, but you're going to want to eat the one that is that really dark green one that hasn't gone out to flower and seed yet.
Right, and that's true with a lot of these plants. Is you want to get them when they're younger, so that they're not bitter, tough, and they haven't been out in the environment, dealing with the temperature change, and they end up getting really rough. However, in a tough situation, all of these can still be eaten, even in their, not so palatable condition. But here again, the dandelion is, you can make remedies for different things. This applies to a lot of the wild lettuces out there. You can use it for tonics. You could, roasted root coffee. The entire plant's edible, so that's another one. And then a lot of people don't know about mustards and garlic mustard and things like that are just growing out there, because they really just look like big weeds with flowers on it, and people, don't recognize it, but they have nutritious leaves on it that you can eat. And remember this, people, this is the real food that you were intended to eat. Not processed, this is all stuff that you would be eating fresh with super amounts of antioxidants and vitamins and other compounds that you're just not going to find at the supermarket. And not to mention, at the supermarket, all your greens are covered in glyphosate and other things. And you were talking about that appeal stuff. So it doesn't matter if you're getting the organic or the regular, it's tainted with different things. So here's another one, wild garlic. And this is what it looks like here. So looks like big grass with these flowers. Now, of course, you're going to want to get a book or something so you can readily identify these, or just go out and practice. And here's one that I have to admit I wasted this year. I had to have had hundreds of pounds of greenery, and it's now seeding everywhere. So lamb's quarter. Lamb's quarter.
Yeah, that's out here too right now.
Right. This is a Native American weed, they say. But you can eat the entire plant, and it can grow really, really tall and put off thousands and thousands of leaves that you can either save dried, or you can go out there, like I said, when the plant's a little bit younger, which they do sprout and grow all year. So it's not something that you're going to, or at least they do here. You're going to want to eat these big leaves. They're super nutritious. And it's just another thing. And guess what? A lot of people pull this out of their gardens, kind of ignorant to the fact that most of the soil that you get from the stores is completely contaminated with lamb's quarter. And even though they steam it and do all this other stuff, the seed survives that. And you see these little plants growing in your garden thinking they're weeds, and a lot of people pull them out. But indeed, it's lamb's quarter. It's one of the most common plants out there.
Clover should be on that list too for anybody. Clover is like a no-brainer, super easy to see, highly nutritious, green.
All right, I thought I would, let you talk about, different stuffs, and then, we can get into the animals that you might find in at least North America that you could try to get. Easy to catch, you don't have to kill. You think about this in a survival situation, you're not going to be just wanting to run around places shooting your gun off to kill stuff, because everybody and anybody is going to know where you're at. Plus, you're going to scare most of the wildlife away when you do that.
Yeah, I would say on any first list of prepping supplies would be multiple safe traps. Because that's the whole thing. I have snare traps, and I've worked with them, and I've tried to get down on the ground and look for little game trails of rabbits and try to set up snares. Dude, I caught nothing. I even got the wax to make sure that everything slid easily on the gauge wire, But if you're gonna snare trap or whatever, you're not gonna get anything. I mean, maybe if you had done it and your grandparents taught you how to do it, and it was a skill you learned as a kid and do it now, that's way different than, I don't know what I'm doing. I got a snare trap and I got to go get food today. That's gonna be like no good. What you want to do is get a safe trap and a piece of bacon, or a safe trap. Fruit works really well. That's what I'm trying to trap the raccoon tonight using fruit. So I got some apples from a friend of mine who brought some apples over. Brought about 20 pounds of apples, so I figure I can get what? 20 gallons out of that of apple juice or something. So using apples to try to trap the raccoons in the safe trap. But the thing is, you got to keep if you got dogs or whatever, cats, you need to make sure that they're not going to get into the traps. 'Cause I guarantee you, if you're in a countryside area, not in the city so much, you're going to get 100% catch rate every single night. Like if you have something in there that's yummy for an animal, whether it is some organs from another animal that you might catch or harvest, or it's a piece of bacon that you had left over, or a piece of meat, like a piece of salami that you can put on just like a piece of coat hanger to have it hang in there so they want to come in and get it. Like safe traps are going to be the easiest way for you to bait and catch stuff, because all you do is set it, you walk away, and there's always something in there. I remember my parents' house. I was up in Knoxville and visited my parents, and they had a whole bunch of squirrels in the backyard, and we were trying to catch possum there because they had possums, so we were trying to catch this one possum. I set the traps out. Man, those squirrels get in those traps every time. You let them out, boom, they're back in again in a few minutes. Boom, they're back in again. Like, these squirrels, stay out of there, you know? Like there's a huge, and you would think squirrel, no way you can get it. But instead of using your 22 or whatever to get a squirrel, just put a trap out. That is going to be the number one prep thing that people do not ever think about, is safe traps. So I don't know, maybe that's a little ramble there, but you never know what you're going to get. And for me, living in a more remote countryside space, yeah, the raccoons and yeah, the possums. Would I eat it in a daily? No. If you were hungry, yes. And right now and I will actually know that because I know a guy who sells the raccoons. There's actually a market for live raccoon. And, wherever you get them, the people who buy them will then feed them out for like 3 to 5 days on corn to clean out their system. Because raccoons, they eat a lot of nasty stuff, man. They're in your trash. They're eating anything, So the guys who buy these raccoon live, they will go ahead and feed them out. And then apparently, after they're fed out for a while, it is a delicacy. Apparently. So there's cruise people who buy live raccoons, and once you get on their list of, hey, these guys always get live raccoons, then, I think they're selling for like $25 each right now, a live raccoon. So, you go out hunting one night, or you set a bunch of traps and you get 4 raccoon and you got $100. Or in the future, you could trade those for something to the proper people. Again, it's all about, but see, that's the whole thing. Nobody wants the possums. But again, if you're hungry enough, or you can use the possum parts of it to bait in traps to get something else. And how do you scale it up? Because you got wild pigs too. I mean, safe traps are something that we all know. It's for smaller animals. But then you can scale those trap sizes up too. Excuse me. Because I know a lot of farmers around here are always baiting pigs in. Or wild hogs, I should say. Not pigs, but wild hogs. Because on some sides of the valleys, you got wild hog problems like where we are at here. We haven't had any wild hog problems in a fair few years. And I'll tell you another thing that I learned from the old timers here who were trying to bait the wild hogs, because they were hired to come out and bait the wild hogs in our valley a fair few years back. This is before I moved in here. And the guy told me, what you do is you take an old carpet and you wrap it around like an old pine tree in the middle of a field by itself. The best thing is if you can find a tree by itself in the middle of a field, you like nail a carpet onto it. And then what you do is you go find old oil from a farm tractor, and you pour that old used, super gunky oil all over that carpet. Now see, these wild hog, they are always seeking out tractors and oil. I didn't know this, because that oil they rub on themselves and it gets all the parasites off their skin. So these hogs are kind of smart. They're going for the oil dripping off of tractors. And a lot of times a farmer will know they have hogs around before the hogs destroy the fields. they'll find rutting under their tractors where the hogs were getting down to roll in the dirt that had the oil in it to get the parasites off their skin. Once these farmers find like hog ruts under their tractors, they know they got a problem because they're in the neighborhood, you know. So anyway, then they put the traps out, or they'll sit there at night with thermal vision and with thermal scopes and just sit there and wait for them. Because they're going to come into that old used motor oil on the carpet and start rubbing all over it on the tree. And when they're there, you know, they're not worried about anybody else. They're worried about, oh, can I rub and get all this stuff? This is the way the guys hunt them here. And I've seen a fair few things where traps actually drop down and catch a whole bunch of hog at the same time. But, you know, there's many options. But you got to think about, again, you know, 1930s, Great Depression Diaries. Great book, Appalachian Observatory. Thanks for letting me borrow that one. It talked about how the woods were completely hunted out there. Like there was no game left. And you got to think, we're talking about the 1930s. So, I mean, everything was hunted out in the forest in the 1930s. So what does that give you a chance now to scrape together some meat out of the forest? Unless you're, you know, I got, you know, a little over 20 acres here. That's all, you know, a lot of it's forest. But then behind me is 3,500 or 4,000 acres of timber forest land that's actually under management under a lumber company that just grows it on a 30-year rotational cut cycle. Like they were in here 4 years ago and they stripped the other side of the mountain on the backside from where I live. So there's 26 more years for them to go on their rotation. So nobody's coming in there. You know, I'm sure a lot of local hunters know that place, but in terms of your game, you know, rabbits are super easy to raise. And I'll just tell you from experience, you start raising rabbits out here, people are going to be super, super angry with you because if the rabbits escape, everybody's gardens are gone. So you might want to raise rabbits, but be extremely cautious because if they get out, they are going to absolutely ruin your gardens. So if anybody around here were to see that you had a rabbit hutch and enclosure and you're raising like 30, 40 rabbits, you're going to have a problem with them. Especially if somebody's gardens start getting nibbled and they're like, hey, we never had any pests or problems. Why are our gardens getting eaten now? They're going to come looking for you. And it'll be like mountain justice, you know what I mean? Like, especially if things go down like that and you start ruining people's food supply because your food supply, there's going to be some conversations you might not want to have. Or maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe you can trade them for something. But anyway, I'm rambling, man. Go.
No, actually, that's exactly where I wanted to start, with rabbits and other supposed vermin or pests that might destroy what you have going on, your wild edibles, your gardening. This is an opportunity, and I don't see why people don't see it this way. Really, like, you know, you're having the coon problem now. We're having good times right now, but when bad times came, you would be happy to have hundreds of pounds of raccoon meat. Believe me, I've eaten it myself. It's not the best in the world, but believe me, if you're hungry, you will eat it. Plus, you can mix it with all these other things. Now, this is one of the things that China and the rest of the world have a one-up on in their culture than we do in the West, is that we have a lot of taboos about things that, you know, we don't want to eat, or we're too good to eat it, or it scares us to eat it, or whatever the reason is. But the truth is there is an abundance of stuff. Now, let's start off saying that, you know, let's talk about the little growing problems. You have gophers, you have groundhogs, you have rabbits, you know, you have other things like that like to come in and eat the food. Well, these are all free meat sources, and all you need to, you know, get these are small traps. Like the gopher traps work pretty good. I've seen them and use. Lots of people use those. It's a little hole. You let them climb right up into it. Whack! Oh, there's a half a pound of meat. And let's go down the list. You know, this is an article I found of just things that you could eat if, you know, everything goes tits up. And this is what we would be doing, and what people would need to do, and they've already done that in the past. So let's skip past the obvious choices of big game, of deer, elk, and other things. the truth is you may not live in an area that's completely full of those. And then, like I said before, you're going to draw attention when you take one of these big beasts down, unless you do it Stone Age style with a staff and, a nice sharp piece of obsidian or some other kind of chert that you've made a weapon out of. But anyway, number one, rabbits. They are everywhere. They are in urban areas. They are in suburban areas. They are in rural areas. They are out in the middle of the desert. They are everywhere. The cottontail is everywhere. Now, a few years ago, there was a plague in the rabbit populations where I live. However, anytime that happens, it kind of thins out the herds of these things, and the more sick and diseased ones die off, leaving the more hardy, tough ones to reproduce. And the following years after one of these things, you have an abundance, an overpopulation of it, which does devour the nutritious greens out there. But what that means for you is that they are healthy to eat. They are full of these nutrition that they got off the ground and they ate up that you were competing for, but now it's in the meat, a high energy food source. So rabbits, number one, but this goes the same for all of the other little tree dwelling things that, if you live in the South, I'm sure you've eaten squirrel dumplings. And this is something that people eat on a regular basis, not even living through hard times. Squirrels, they're everywhere. They mass produce. You can catch them. You can breed them. You could do the same thing with, the raccoons or the rabbits or any of that stuff. There's also other stuff like chipmunks, woodchucks. I would stay away from prairie dogs unless you use some precautions. But those are also a food source in an emergency situation. And these things are literally everywhere. People don't notice them, but if you hang out in nature, you realize they are everywhere. They taste like chicken, kind of, a little greasier, according to this article here. But don't forget about the big birds roaming North America, the pheasants, the quail, the grouse, the Hungarian partridge, and other species that are still running around out there. Now, you may have to have some know-how to get some of these because they're tricky, but once you find them, you can catch them with nets, traps, a club, a rock, a slingshot, lots of options to take down some of these smaller game without exploding your arsenal of self-defense systems so that everybody everywhere knows where you're at. And remember, there's also waterfowl. In North America, we have Canadian geese, we have ducks, we have all kinds of mallard things or whatever water creatures. And then let's get down to the big thing. Like I was saying, with a little know-how, a little preparation, you can revert back to the Stone Age success of big game hunting with some modern day twists, compound bows. You can make your own staff. Matter of fact, there's a guy on YouTube that's really, boy, he's interesting. He sits there and makes Paleolithic tools all the time. He'll show you how to make the sap, to make the glue. It's actually pretty simple to do that. You just mix a little ash, a little pine sap, and a little elk poo-poo, and it makes one of the best glues that you could imagine. You just heat it up, light it on fire, drip it right into the place, and set your stone, and then wrap it with some sinew, and you got yourself a bona fide grade A 100% Paleolithic weapon and hunter's tool. And you could upgrade these things with glass. There's new lightweight materials. You can make arrowheads out of glass and other things. Metals are abundant in today's technological world. So there are options, but I would want to stick through to the things that don't make noise, the smaller game. Figure out ways to utilize the meat that other people aren't eating. And this seems to be a really good strategy for long-term survival, especially if you're on the go. These are the things that you're going to be going after, the squirrels, the rabbits, the pheasants, the quail, things like that, because they're a small, nutritious meat source, and you can cook it and eat it now. It's unlikely that in uncertain times that you're going to be carrying around a 70-pound chunk of elk or deer on your back, and it takes a lot of effort and multiple people, according to the archaeology that points to, like, the Clovis people and other people had lots of people to take down like a bison. I mean, they had 20, 30 people doing that. And they were running, these giant elephant creatures off the cliffs. They were cutting them. They were carving them. They were processing it. So we're talking about a super giant in the past civilization and a mechanism of like a factory style eating of the meat. unfortunately, that would be some band or tribe that got together a large amount of people. So if you're not untrusting in a dire situation and, things have fallen apart, things are unstable, there's weird things going on, there's an in-between time that all of the crazies and the people that weren't prepared are just going to disappear. And that's just the way it is. So if you can figure out how to last to the end of that, basically a new world awaits. Lots of property, abundance of animals, food, resources, and space. But unfortunately, there is a phase with some darker aspects of civilization that have, over and over again repeated themselves, from totalitarian governments to natural disasters, you name it. But if you're prepared mentally first, and then you actually start doing little things every day that contributes to your long-term goal of being self-sufficient, ready, and with the proper skills that it takes to just live outside like a natural human being, you're fine. You're going to do it. It just takes prep.
Yeah, you made me laugh thinking about those, pop-up gopher type of things. Remember when we were at LeakCon back when Diamond arranged that, and Robert Felix came and we were up at LeakCon? Like, I'd never seen, that was my first time to go to Colorado, so I hadn't seen those pop-up gopher things before. They made me laugh so hard when I was walking down the street. I was like, they were just in like a field, and they popped up, and I was like, what are those things? So there was no fence even there, so I walked out into the field, and I was like, what are those things? And
groundhogs.
Those ones in Colorado, they pop up and they look, and then you go close, and another they pop down, and then another one alerts, and they pop down again, and they have these whole series of holes and like heads coming up out of that whack-a-mole game. That was the craziest thing. I sat there, must have been for like half an hour watching those things, just thinking, what are these animals, man? I'd never seen them before. They were so funny to watch the way they kind of interacted and were checking me out and thing. That was great. I really enjoyed that experience of seeing those animals for the first time. It's like going to Africa or somewhere and seeing an elephant for the first time. But these were like mini creatures. They were just like so trippy. They were looking at me, going, "You're not going to catch even one of us, bro."
You know what a trip is about those things? The groundhogs is the reason a lot of people don't see the little versions, the marmots and the groundhogs like that, is because in the expansion of the West and everybody was grazing their cattle, the cattle would break their legs, horses would break their legs in the multiple holes that they would put. So they were considered vermin. And another funny thing about that, we're speaking of eating things, like and how to catch them and how to utilize them. I kid you not, a group of people made a machine that's like a bulldozer with a vacuum cleaner, and it goes up to those things and it literally sucks the little things out, the little groundhogs out. I went up to Colorado and filmed them. They're trippy things, but they're associated with plague and different stuff because of the fleas they carry. But this machine literally sucks like hundreds of them out of the ground, and it puts them in a box that's like a four-sided trampoline so they don't get hurt. You imagine you're hungry and you're just like, well, just hold on. Let me drive out to the field and suck up a bunch of marmosets or groundhogs. And, if you live on the East Coast or over there where you live, you guys have woodchucks, don't you? It's like the big beaver thing it's not a beaver, but it looks like a beaver.
Haven't seen any of those, but we do have beavers in the pond, and it's a chore to go in there every year, and my neighbor does it, to go in there and try to pull out the sticks one by one, and there's beavers all over the place here. But if people were to hunt them, the tail's a delicacy. So if you're going to do anything with a beaver, you're going for the tail. Because the Cherokee over here, the tail was a revered part of the meat source because it was so fatty. Think about like a chicken butt, you can buy those things and they're deep fried or whatever, or air fried, something like that. But something like that, but even fattier and just like even a heavier oil. And like a little tiny piece of this thing will keep you going all day for your needs for like oil for your brain to function correctly. No woodchucks here. I don't know what that is. I've never seen a woodchuck. So far on my property, we got the pheasants. There's a little family of them that lives up around. I don't hunt them because I think they're the coolest birds, because sometimes they'll come down and walk across the gravel driveway like that we can see from the house up on a little bit up the hill there, going to the back property. Yeah, such stunning birds. Like when they move in the light and they catch, like it's just like a glistening sapphire as it kind of walks through if you get it at the right daylight. Like they come pretty frequently. Well, not like you see them once a year. They come, and you see them every couple of weeks. They'll pop back in. And that's the whole thing that if you have land, and I noticed one thing too, we didn't hunt last year on the land or the last 2 years for deer. But when the hunting season started, suddenly like all these deer turn up on our property because they weren't hunted here. And I've never seen that. Maybe like 6 pop up in the morning one morning, and there's like 3 down the front driveway the next morning, and there's just like a couple in the back field that were cruising around. It's like when they start getting hunted, they know where to go, where it's a safe spot. So here's a little secret. If you're not hunting continuously and harvesting animals off your property, they're going to find that as a quote unquote safe space, because there's they understand those. Deers are super smart, man. Like that, once that first shot goes up, boom, they're all gone. Like they know the season. They must have a calendar that they follow also, that they know, oh shoot, man, day after tomorrow, hunting season's starting again. We got to go bail right now. What do you think? We should get an early start up into the forest. Oh, by the way, I had that article that I sent over to you here. Speaking of that, on hunting on federal lands, please know your local regulations for what's going to be allowed to do that. So here's an article that a new rule could cripple federal land use and that the economy that depends on it. So it's talking about the Bureau of Land Management and the way they're radically changing federal land management in the United States. And they're saying if this is implemented in 2024, if activities such as oil and gas drilling, grazing, mining, logging, and recreation usage in large parts of the American West could be almost entirely halted. And what shocks me is, those maps that we've seen of those habitation zones, a red and a yellow map that, came out where it said, there'll be human habitation zones, these areas will be off limits. And I even forget what the title of the map series was that I saw. And they even broke it down into more regional things, which is much more detailed. But, you just look at the full view of the United States, and half of it was off limits. And I'm like, they're never, ever, ever going to get away with. How would they ever get away with that? It's America. There's no way. But after COVID, I'm thinking they're going to get away with anything they want to if they push it. Because my whole question is, if they're going to take part of or a quarter of the Western United States completely offline, we're like, you can't go in there, you can't use it, there's no commerce in there, humans are forbidden from going into this zone. At what point do people really wake up and go, oh my gosh, they're really taking the country away? Like, okay, now what? We're going to be pushed into a city? And I'm just wondering what the percentage of the people that are just going to go marching into the cities compliantly going, okay, versus, the country folk that are sitting out here going, no way. No, that's not happening. Because there's definitely a divide here between the city and the country. And it's so stark, really incredibly stark in terms of how different the mind frame is in terms of compliance. Because like even the mask mandates here, like there were none. I had some friends, you might know Chase Hudson over there. They have Hemp Lucid is the company that they have there, their products. But he and Nate come out to my farm out here and spent a couple of days out. And it was total, this is exactly in the middle of COVID. And they rock up here in East Tennessee, this little tiny town I live in. It's like, yeah, let's go down. We'll go grab some coffee downtown and just walk around so you guys can see a little town. 0 people had masks on. And they just come from a place, flew in like a day earlier where it was 100%. You had to wear a mask or you'd be arrested on the street with no mask, and come out here in East Tennessee and nobody. And we're sitting to have coffee. And he goes, I can't even believe this is like a surreal world. You're sitting out here, there's no mask. This is like a cool little mountain town, but you guys, it's like, this is the most surreal place. Like it feels like I dropped back in time to like 2018 again. But that's the whole thing, is it just doesn't work out here because it's all fresh air and you're so separated from people, and you got these massive farms, and I got 20 acres and the next person has 20 acres, and the next person has 50, and the next person has 100. And you come out here and this whole thing about, you got to wear a mask because you might transmit. Dude, my next neighbor's like a quarter of a mile away. Are you kidding me? And even when you go downtown, there's barely anybody ever walking around. Although a new company that had bought downtown pretty much all of Knoxville and then refurbished it and turned it into that new bar and restaurant zone down. It used to be the old dangerous factory and like warehouse area where you never wanted to walk late at night. When I was in university, downtown Knoxville, when you went down the hill and you just didn't want to go down there at night, like, yeah, you stayed on the main street up top, and if you just didn't want to go down there because it was one of those areas where like, bro, roll up the windows, I don't even know if we want to drive here to go to the highway kind of places at night. But it got totally redeveloped, and there's like cool apartments and little chic things and this, and there's restaurants and outdoor bars and all kind of crazy stuff, music venues. That company came in here and bought up every single piece of available property in this little town I live in, and they're going to redo the entire town. And I'm thinking, all right, what's going on? And that's why all these local people at the city council are all on these Agenda 21 goals or Agenda 2030 now. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? So you got this investment corporation comes in and buy the little town, basically the rest of it that's available for sale. All of it, I mean, 100%. Anything that was available for sale downtown was bought by this thing. And then all these, complicit globalists, I'm trying to fill in the last word here, charlatans or something along that direction, even at our local city council level, are trying to implement Agenda 2030 goals in East Tennessee in the tiniest of towns out here in the Cherokee National Forest. Like, what is going on? So I'm going to stop before I just say something I don't want to say. So yeah, back to you, man.
That's a really trippy thing. I live in the Southwest, and I'm very familiar with all of the places that you could stop and check out things in the BLM. And let me blow your mind for just a minute. Putting aside that further shows you the agenda to lock people in little areas, in little concentrated camps, if you will. We call them cities, the prison planet. Now, putting all that aside, that's just more evidence of that, and that's true throughout the Southwest, the South, the Northeast, and the Northwest of the U.S., and in Canada, Mexico, and other countries, that the Agenda 2030 and those similar programs and NGO-based, initiatives are happening everywhere. But let's put all that aside. Think about this. Earlier, I was also talking about not only that, but the shutdown and the closure, basically, of the dissemination of free information to the world's people. Almost all of these BLM sites in the Southwest are of ancient origin, where human occupation showed evidence of not only them being there, but of signs of their times. And, a lot of us, including the Oppenheimer Ranch and, Diamond and them and lots of other people, Anthony Peratt, realized that some of these drawings that are on the rocks in all of these areas, a lot of them owned by the BLM, by the way. The one near me is called Three Rivers. It has over 20,000 petroglyphs of, in my opinion, several different civilizations. They accredit it to only one, but you can see that there's different styles, references to Mayan, Aztec, and other things. But another thing that's really significant about these sites, besides the plasma petroglyph history, and what that might mean for, upcoming times of the end of the cycle or the beginning of the cycle, however you want to look at it, that they documented things like this in the remote past. But not only that, in the recent past, they have marked all you need to know to be on the move as a migrating civilization to find food, water, and other things. So we talked about all these things, the plants, the wildlife that you could possibly eat in a grid down scenario or financial collapse, or maybe it's just massive amounts of war and natural disasters that turn civilization off. You revert back to the way it was in Paleolithic times, Hunger Dryas times, basically. So not only do you have to navigate the land and all that stuff in modern times, there's already people who have done that. Not once, not twice, but 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times in the same places in the North American continent. They left the story on the rocks. Like right near here where I live at Three Rivers, I can go over there and find pictures of crawdads, fish, mountain lion, roadrunners, frogs, turtles, antelope, deer, elk, bear. Think about that. It's a literal map that is in the path of ancient migrants that moved back and forth from the North American to the southern part of North America, and possibly all the way down into the rainforest of the Amazon, because there's evidence left, people wearing macaw feathers and things like that up here. There's ancient stuff, at least into the Mayan times. And then you have the archaic petroglyphs that who knows who did that. That could be like the Clovis people, who knows. Now, they have pretty good testing and dating on some of these. However, when you go to the sites and you look at them yourself with your own eyeball, you see a story told that they're not saying. You see pictures of references of things that happened that were of so much importance that they created sacred sites. And at those sacred sites just happen to be the pinnacle of how to navigate the environment around you in North America. So all of the wildlife, the directions of water, where the other civilizations are at. Like there's a map stone near Albuquerque that, in my opinion, shows the Crow Valley petroglyphs. It shows where the Petroglyph National Monument is in Albuquerque. That's kind of where the suburbs have moved right into this ancient site that's owned by the BLM. This is ancient history that's not only talking about Native Americans and possibly other peoples like that came here from different places, but an entire history of the planet and how to survive here and the things that happen. Is it aliens? Is it plasma petroglyphs? I don't know, but there was something so important. Now, you do have to keep in mind that a lot of these people we know were eating mind-altering substances a great deal of the time. Different things from mixes of ayahuasca and alcohol to mushrooms, peyote, etc. This was something they did all the time. So maybe they saw the changes in the magnetic field. Maybe they literally saw plasma in the sky over the planet. Whatever you believe is the case, these people marked it down. And not only that, the maps and the know-how to live in this area. And I would bet that all around the world, there are these same ancient places from the first peoples of wherever, or even multiple generations of different waves of migrations of people adding to the knowledge using archaeoastronomy and petroglyphs and different stuff. A lot of hidden knowledge that is undoubtedly connected to the ancient world. What you think about, it's like the Sumerians and things like that, because some of the same sacred geometry, stories, symbols, etc., exist in both areas of civilization and history.
Yeah, and shout out Ransom. Like, if people don't know Ransom Godwin, he's like one of the premier explorers, research, and documentarians of petroglyphs in the Southwest United States, on the planet. Seriously, on the planet. Like, would they go to see and get invited into locations that nobody else goes to, on sacred lands, Native American lands? Like, people don't get invited there, but they do. So that's the whole difference, is the way they explain it is they understand what the ancients saw. So when somebody from more the native peoples or the originals sees that, they understand what those plasma glyphs meant, what those expansions of the sun meant, and they say, yeah, you understand what our forefathers had told us to look for these signs again. You know, they come up with these different representations and digitizations of what these things are actually coming off the cliff faces, and show those persons in the locations. Are like, oh, okay, yeah, you might want to see something over here also. So, you know, what Ransom's talking about, and the places they've been and the places they've been invited, like, you know, National Geographic has nothing comparatively. I mean, National Geographic's not invited onto the reservations to go take a look at these petroglyphs. Like, when you talk about sacred sites, quote unquote, I mean, those are off limits for most people. But for their crew over there, that's not off limits. That's an invitation, because they understand the petroglyphs behind that and the explaining of magnetic field changes. And there's a science behind what was the legends and the carvings on these walls, where most people made fun of it for so long. It's like chicken scratch, but it wasn't. So anyway, Ransom, I'm going to leave off there, man, because thank you for doing the work you do to bring that to our collective consciousness of humanity, to try to understand these stories and timelines again that have been repeating, and what we see in the skies and what we're seeing again right now. It's all coming right back again so quickly.
Why do you think the government would propose? Well, and by the way, BLM is actually not part of the government. They're a private organization under the umbrella of the Department of Interior. It's the way I understand it. So I may be wrong, but I don't think so. They own these spots. Now, think to yourself, why would they want to cut off a modern civilization from that old knowledge of where to eat, where to go, where to be safe?
I have an old Cherokee village on my property, which I need to explore more. It's halfway up the mountain where I live, on the property I have. Been up there, it's all foundations. What's interesting though, it's terraced in. I got these different terrace levels going up. It's very similar to like a mine pyramid. I'm wondering if they sculpted the mountain, if it's been, tens of thousands of years. And I have a sliver of a remnant. Anyway, thanks for joining us tonight. DuByne and Ransom Godwin signing off. Do your own research, take from it what you will, share with others, listen one. We'll get back now.
In July 2023, the floods in India killed thousands of people. It destroyed their home, and people struggled for food, water, and electricity for days. In early August 2023, a series of mysterious wildfires broke out in the U.S. state of Hawaii, predominantly on the island of Maui. The wind-driven fires prompted evacuations, caused widespread damage, and killed at least 115 people, leaving 850 others missing in the town of Lahaina. This is the perfect example of why we should prepare for emergencies, from having an emergency food survival kit to having extra blankets, batteries, flashlights, etc. Store flashlights of high-grade quality. Don't forget, a multi-tool kit and supplies for the pet, like a bowl for water and a toy for comfort. The first thing you should stock up on is water. During heavy storms, the water supply is disturbed, and going to the supermarket to buy water is out of the question. Clean drinking water is more essential than food. Therefore, you must ensure you stock up on water, at least 1 gallon per person for 3 days. Depending on the region your home is in, you can be subjected to heavy rains, landslides, wildfires, floods, a tornado, or even government and an unstable public. In any case, being prepared for the any scenario is necessary. You should stock up on the best food for emergency survival, safety kits, extra blankets, and more. Be informed. Also keep watching Mini Ice Age conversations to stay informed on the latest trends and dangers threatening our future and world. HeavensHarvest.com. Use the promo code ADAPT to save 15%. Stay prepared.